Good morning. We are busily working on trying to warm up these chambers. A little chilly today. The hour of convening has arrived and the Senate will come to order. At this time, I'd like to ask that all unauthorized persons exit the chamber, including the penguins that are hanging out in the rear. I'm at a loss for words that I don't even know how to recognize you. The chair recognizes the distinguished, honorable senator from the 53rd that serves as our rules chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a great day at our state capitol, and I'd advise people that think it's cold maybe to eat more gravy biscuit and some food like that to help thicken them up some. I can help with that training. Moment in history today is Senator Bruce Thompson's birthday. The journal's been read and found to be correct. Thank you.
I was going to bring that up if you didn't, but of course, you're always on your A game. Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? The chair hears none, and the reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal?
Hey, I didn't know this one.
The chair continues to recognize the senator from the 53rd, the long-winded senator from the 53rd.
Well, long-winded, true. It's also the senator from the 9th district, and we're delighted to have her in this chamber. I just didn't know. I apologize for that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Happy birthday to both of y'all. All right, so where were we at here? Hearing none, the reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? Chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators who have bills or resolutions, please bring them to the Secretary's desk at this time. Mr. Secretary, first reading of Senate bills and resolutions, please.
Senate Bill 104 by Senator James of the 35th, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 8 of Title 12 of the OCGA relating to waste management so as to prohibit the distribution of certain bags made of plastic film and items.
Natural resources.
Senate Bill 105 by Senator Strickland of the 17th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 10 of Title 17 of the OCGA relating to procedure for sentencing and imposition of punishment and Article
Judiciary.
Senate Bill 106 by Senators Davenport of the 44th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 20-2-742 of the OCGA relating to multi-tiered system of supports prior to suspension or expulsion.
Education and youth.
Senate Bill 107 by Senator Strickland of the 17th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 12 of Chapter 3 of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to post-secondary education grants for foster children and adopted children so as to provide for the
Higher education.
Senate Bill 108 by Senators Davenport of the 44th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 30 of the OCGA relating to handicapped persons so as to create the Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired.
Government oversight.
Senate Bill 109 by Senators Cowser of the 46th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 16 of Title 50 of the OCGA relating to general provisions relative to public property so as to extend automatic repeals of certain provisions regarding writing off small amounts due to the state, to amend Title 20 of the OCGA relating to education.
Higher education.
Senate Bill 110 by Senators Harrell of the 40th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 15 of Article 6 of Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to miscellaneous provisions under the Quality Basic Education Act so as to prohibit the assignment of graded homework for students in grades 10
Education and youth.
Senate Bill 111 by Senators Jackson of the 2nd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 31 of the OCGA relating to health so as to repeal it in its entirety, Chapter 26 relating...
Health and Human Services.
This completes the order, Mr. President.
Mr. Secretary, will you please read reports of standing committees?
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Agriculture and Consumer Affairs has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 86, do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Walker of the 20th. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 32, do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Strickland of the 17th. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 33, do pass. Senate Bill 34, do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Strickland of the 17th. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Science and Technology has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 52, do pass by substitute. Senate Bill 53, do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Dolezal of the 27th. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State and Local Governmental Operations General has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendations. Senate Bill 49, do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Anderson of the 24th. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Mr. Secretary, will you please read bills and resolutions for the second time?
Senate Bill 44 by Senator Thompson of the 14th and others, special license plates, honoring Support Our Troops Incorporated, establish. Senate Bill 60 by Senator Thompson of the 14th and others, Georgia State Indemnification Fund shall be paid in instances of a heart attack, stroke, public safety officer, revise. This completes the order, Mr. President.
It's now time for our morning roll call. The chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, y'all. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 34th, 35th, 36th, 38th. Please excuse them, unanimous consent for business inside the Capitol, sir.
Without objection, the senators from the 34th, 35th, 36th, and 38th are excused. The chair recognizes the majority whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senators from the 50th and the 56th.
Without objection, the senators from the 50th and the 56th are excused. Chair recognizes the senator from the 27th.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senators from the 20th and the 21st for business outside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senators from the 20th and 21st are excused. The chair recognizes the senator from the 43rd.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 26th.
Without objection, the senator from the 26th is excused. Are there any additional motions to excuse? Going once, going twice. The secretary will call the roll of senators. Signify your presence by voting the yea switch. The secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? The senator from the 47th, the freshman senator to your right will show you how that machine works. There you go. There you go. Well done. Well done. Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. At this time, it is our morning devotional time, and I'd ask that all senators take your seats and cease all audible conversations. Also, I'd like to ask our doorkeepers to secure the chamber at this time. I'd like to recognize the senator from the 14th to take us through our Pledge of Allegiance and to introduce our chaplain of the day.
Thank you, Mr. President. Join me as we honor our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now our Georgia flag. As many of you know, I enjoy working with senior pastors in Northwest Georgia. But observing and working with multicultural, multi-denominational leaders throughout North Georgia, one thing has become very clear. That's preachers are a lot like politicians. They tend to deliver messages just a little longer than they need to. Others enjoy positions more than their mission. Some fail to hear what others are saying about them. Things like they truly missed their calling and probably should seek another career. All that to say, there are those, like my friend Justin, that is very articulate, right on point with his messages. He's extremely humble, yet he's a man's man. He doesn't shy away from tackling tough issues or problems within the church. When it comes to answering the call, he is exactly where he's called to be. Take you through a history. In 1903, Edwin McCain bought 600 acres to construct a textile plant in Cartersville to manufacture horse collars. The following year, that company became known as American Textile Company, or to some of you, ATCO. It opened its first cotton mill in Cartersville in 1904. The business continued to transition in 1929 when Goodyear bought the plant to make cotton tire cords and modernized the village to 291 homes for their workers. At the time, it was considered one of the most modern and beautiful mill towns in the entire South. It was equipped with a school, post office, baseball fields, a barber shop. In fact, in the early years, it actually served as a flag station for the railroad. Why do I say all that? Well, back in 1909, a group of men met in an auditorium at the Atco School and with the desire to organize a Baptist church. That church faithfully served and thrived as an integral part of that community for many years. But when Goodyear announced in 2003 that it was closing the plant and laying off the remaining 319 employees, the area declined. Riddled with challenges and frequented by law enforcement day after day, Atco lost the luster as a lighthouse in the South. That brings me back to Justin. For such a time as this, God brought Justin to Cartersville in 2020, right in time for the pandemic. He's leading ATCO through a revitalization that is incredible. Only a young country boy with a twang and a baseball competitive spirit could go into this diverse community such as ATCO and serve as a messenger from the Lord, telling the members and the community not what they want to hear, but what they need to hear. I love his heart, his surrender to ministry, his competitive spirit, but most of all, I love the man he is. Please join me as we welcome this country boy preacher from Cohutta that's now in Cartersville, Justin Holcomb.
Well, I just want to say thanks for the invitation to allow me to come and be here. I'm deeply honored and also humbled to be in this room with you guys. As a lifelong resident of Georgia, I know my accent. You guys thought I was from the north, but what a privilege to be here. To get the chance to do this. Thank you, Senator Thompson, for the invitation and for the introduction today. I was going to spend some time kind of busting his chops, but they told me I only have a couple of minutes, so we'll spare him from that. I do want to say to him, though, happy birthday. And I think one of our other senators in here had a birthday, so happy birthday to you as well. Again, just such a special moment. In rooms like this all over the country, decisions will be made that decide the future for my generation, but also decisions that will be made will decide the future of my kids, my grandkids. And just driving up here today, I became overwhelmed by that thought. And one thing I say that if you don't hear anything else, please hear this as just a token of my gratitude from a guy in his younger 30s. Thank you for what you do and for how you serve our state. It don't go unnoticed, and I appreciate it. But I came here specifically to hopefully share something that may help you, may encourage you. And I came with one particular question. Here's the question, okay? If you knew exactly, or if you were able to know exactly how many days you had to live, how would that change your life? How would that change the way that you make decisions? How would that change the way that you conduct business, the way that you perform your role in these duties as a senator of this great state? How would that change the way you love your spouse, the way that you parent your children? Obviously, it would change it drastically. There would be great power in having that knowledge, the ability to know how many days we have left on this side of eternity. But in my opinion, I think there's even greater power in not obtaining that information. You see, if we knew how many days we had to live, we'd probably just simply coast through life, correct? We'd wait until those final moments to really make a difference. But the fact that none of us know how many days we have left on this side of eternity, it empowers us to live every single day as if it was our last. I want to share just one verse with you that's really changed my life. This verse was written originally by a guy named Moses. Many of us are probably familiar with his name, or at least we've heard of him before, but Moses is arguably one of the greatest leaders in human history. At any given moment, he was leading about 600,000 people, and those people were natural-born complainers. Now, I know you guys can't relate to that, right? We could call Moses' people constituents as they were complaining against his leadership. None of you guys experienced that. Everybody loves politicians, right? Everybody is so kind to you. Yeah, right. You guys understand Moses very well. Even though you cannot relate maybe to his weaknesses, even though you can't relate to the fact that he led an entire nation out of slavery, you can relate to his weaknesses, his fears, and the complaints that went against him. I'm reminded of a quote by a guy named Samuel Chan this morning as he spoke about leadership and positions such as the ones you hold today. He said that leadership is bleedership. If you ain't bleeding, you ain't leading. So it's tough, the job that you guys have. So again, I commend you and say thank you. But Moses' words are found in the 90th Psalm in verse number 12. Here's what he said. Teach us to number our days carefully, so that we may develop wisdom in our hearts. He was simply trying to get us to understand that we really only have one life to live. Now, if we were to calculate Moses' days, he lived 120 years. If we don't include leap years in those calculations, he lived about 43,800 days. A lot of days, right? I dare say none of us will make it there. I hope you live 120 years, but reality is we probably won't make it there. The average life expectancy, the last time I checked, of a human being is 78 years. Not counting leap years, if we do that quick math, that's 28,470 days. Y'all are smart people. You can do the calculations and figure out how many days you've lived on this side of eternity. And in comparison to the average life expectancy of 78 years, you can calculate how many days, give or take, that you might have left to live. But here's reality, right? You may live longer than 78 years, but you may not make it to 78 years. The kicker is that none of us know how many days that we have left on this planet. So, man, we've got to make a difference. And this verse has changed my life. The instructions Moses is trying to give us there in the Psalms has changed my life and really given me 4 principles I want to share real quickly. Here's the first one. Since we don't know how many days we have left, we've got to live with the end in mind. I know it's kind of a morbid way to think, right? Thinking about death. Nobody wants to think about death all the time, but especially given the year that we've just come from, death is a reality. 10 out of 10 people are going to die. You know, the greatest athletes are the ones who play every single game as if it was their last. because in reality, it might very well be their last. Likewise, the greatest leaders are those who live each day as if it's the last, because in reality, today, God forbid, might be our last. And the way I live my life, again, it's a morbid way to think, but it is motivational. I wake up every morning and I leave the house asking myself the question, is this the very last time that I'll get to kiss my wife goodbye before I leave for work? Is this morning the very last morning that I'll get to tell my 1.5-year-old son that I love him? Again, reality is that we don't know when our end will come, but here's what we do know, that we're one day closer today to our end than we were yesterday. None of us are getting any older. I think about Senator Thompson's story this time last year as he was battling COVID, and thank God for just God's healing mercy over his life so that he's able to stand before you today and continue to lead in his territory in our great state and the capacity in which he leads. But this time last year, Senator Thompson never expected to be fighting for his life. And God healed him, and as we stated, he's here today, and I can guarantee you he lives now with the end in mind, as we all should. Here's a second principle for us. A pastor speaking this, right? Of course he's going to say this because it's biblically true. Be prepared to meet God. And there's really only one way to do this according to Scripture. That's through a personal relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ. I'm thinking about one of Jesus' followers in his earthly ministry, a guy by the name of Thomas. And I relate to Thomas real well because he is always asking questions. And he asked Jesus a question, Jesus, how can we know that we can make it to heaven when we die? And Jesus said in John's Gospel, chapter 14, verse 6, some very specific words. He said, Thomas, I'm the way, I'm the truth, I'm the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And Jesus was plainly saying, if you want to make it to heaven, when you step into eternity, you've got to have a personal relationship with Christ. Now, that's a far-fetched claim for those who've never encountered Jesus to hear, right? And I'm thinking, man, that's the craziest thing that I ever heard. And I share that often with others, and they even make that statement to me. But it would be far-fetched if this wasn't the same Jesus who predicted everything about his death, and those predictions became a reality. It would be far-fetched if this wasn't the same Jesus who said, hey, I'll die, but I'll raise again my own life from the dead 3 days later. And historically, those events did happen. So this Jesus, his words about eternity, his words about preparing to meet God, they can be trusted. So live with the end in mind. Be prepared to meet God. Here's a third one. Give your one shot your best shot. When the trailing team of a basketball game, they get the ball in the final seconds of a game that is close, what do they usually do? They call a timeout, right? The reason for this is because they want the opportunity to draw up the best play, to give their best shot, and hopefully hear a swish as the buzzer sounds. So it should be the same in our life. We should give everything that we have to every single day, knowing that this one shot we have at life is our only shot. We might as well make it the best shot we have. I think today about a pastor who was a mentor of mine, successful pastor in Cobb County, Georgia, and we just buried him this past week. He passed away, sadly, due to COVID. His name was Pastor Mike Stevens. Deeply impacted my life, deeply impacted his entire community, and he constantly poured into me and several other younger pastors, and he simplified everything. That was one of the things I loved about him. And he said, Justin, he said, young pastors, if you really want to give this one life the best shot that you have, here's what you need to do. Be a godly man, be a godly husband, be a godly father, be a godly leader, and in that order. I think that can allow us to give this one life our best shot. And then finally today, leave this world in better shape than we found it. Leave this world in better shape than we found it. I think about Jesus. He gives us what is known as the Great Commandment in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 22, and he basically said, love God and love people. If you want to change this world, love God, love people. Think, too, about examples in the New Testament, such as the Apostle Paul, and he kind of tagged along to what Jesus said, love God, love people. But the Apostle Paul also exemplified an awesome truth that I want to leave with you, and it's my closing thought today. Yes, love God, love people, but invest in the future. Invest in younger generations. That's why it's my philosophy of ministry, to live out a ministry that outlives my life. The only way I can do that is by investing in those who will come after me. Simply put, I know you guys get this, you do it every single day, but I want to encourage you to continue with this feat. Just simply do something positive that outlives your life, because reality is we don't know when our last day is going to come. I pray that you have many more successful days ahead of you, but man, we might as well give this day everything we have as well. It's my prayer for all of us today that we will live with the end in mind. We'll be prepared to meet God when that time comes. We'll give this one shot our best shot, and we'll leave this world in better shape than we found it. Father, thank you for this group. I thank you for the love you have for every one of us. God, help us to take a moment today to recognize that you didn't just tell us you love us in the Word of God, because in this modern day, talk can be cheap, but Jesus, you proved it, coming and dying for us and rising again 3 days later to prove, yes, you love us, but also prove that you are God Almighty and you are to be trusted. Thank you publicly in this amazing, humbling setting. Thank you, Jesus, that you've allowed me to be born in this country, the United States, the greatest country on the planet, the greatest country in human history. Thank you for allowing me to be born and continue to be a lifelong resident of this great state of Georgia. I pray today for these elected officials that you would touch them, their families. I pray for Governor Kemp and his family. I pray for President Biden and his family, as well as all of our federal leaders and their families, that you would provide health, that you would provide protection over them, that they too would recognize the love that you have for them, that they would be encouraged in moments of discouragement, that they would be courageous in moments of fear. I pray that you would grant them wisdom beyond their own abilities, and empower them today to govern well. Give them the integrity to do what is right, even when nobody is looking. And God, I pray today specifically you would meet every need that they and their family have, and we trust that your hand will continue to bless this group and this country. In the name of Christ we pray. Amen.
If I could have each senator stay at your desk before we greet the chaplain, I'd like the secretary to read a resolution.
Senate Resolution 80 by Senators Thompson of the 14th and others, a resolution honoring the life and memory of Pastor Douglas Eugene Doug Harris and for other purposes. Whereas the state of Georgia mourns the loss of a distinguished citizen and father with the passing of Pastor Douglas Eugene Doug Harris, and whereas Pastor Harris was an outstanding member of his community, remembered by many for not only his years of service to his community, but also for his deep commitment to his faith and family. And be it further resolved that the Secretary of the Senate is authorized and directed to make an appropriate copy of this resolution available for distribution to the family of Pastor Douglas Eugene Doug Harris. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. Let's go meet the chaplain. Senate will come back to order. Are there any unanimous consents? Chair sees none. Does any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? The chair sees none. You have a consent calendar of privilege resolutions before you. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? The chair hears none. Is there objection to adoption of the resolutions on the consent calendar? The chair hears none. The resolutions on the consent calendar are adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw and commit? Chair sees none. We are now moving on to the rules calendar. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of Senate Resolution 26?
Senate Resolution number 26, a resolution by Senator Harper of the 7th, a resolution proposing an amendment to the Constitution so as to authorize the state to incur general obligation debt in order to make loans or grants to certain counties, municipalities, consolidated governments, local authorities, and local commissions that own airports for the acquisition, construction, development, extension, enlargement, or improvement of such airports, to provide for submission of this amendment for ratification or rejection and for other purposes.
For what purpose does the senator from the 7th rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to lay Senate Resolution 26 on the table.
Senator from the 7th has asked for unanimous consent that Senate Resolution 26 be placed on the table. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and it is placed on the table. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption to House Bill 80?
House Bill number 80, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act making and providing appropriations for the state fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2020 and ending June 30th, 2021, known as the General Appropriations Act, Act number 404, approved June 30th, 2020, so as to make, provide, and change certain appropriations for the operation of the state government and its departments. The Committee of House Information and Audits has examined the within and finds the same properly engrossed. The Senate Committee on Appropriations recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Tillery of the 19th.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 19th. Ms. Secretary, can you please read the substitute first?
Senate Appropriations Committee substitute to House Bill 80, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act making and providing appropriations for the state fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2020 and ending June 30th, 2021, known as the General Appropriations Act, Act number 404, approved June 30th, 2020, so as to make, provide, and change certain appropriations for the operation of the state governments and its departments. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Now the chair recognizes the senator from the 19th, our Appropriations Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members of the Senate. The budget process doesn't happen just within the Senate Appropriations Committee itself, and many of you know that. I appreciate all the time and effort that you have diligently put in with your request, bringing constituent groups by the committee. Thank you so much for the effort that you've put into this process already. Also need to say thank you to a few other folks. As you know, during this time, this is the first time we had to do an amended budget with COVID. We dealt with the general budget last year. And in this process, we realized that our media, the medium that the Senate had at its hands, was not nearly as filled out as the media that the House had. Although we were supposed to hold the joint hearings ourselves, we were able to, at the invitation of our friends, use their media services on the House side to really make this process happen. And, you know, that came because I know Speaker Ralston at the top and Chairman England on the House side opened up those doors and made that offer to us. It also happened because Betsy Thoreau over at the House Media Services Office was so kind as to lend her staff to help us get things out as well. We couldn't have got through this process and allowed it to be as open as it was to the public for input had they not been kind team players to help us through this process, and I want to say thank you to them. Also have to say thank you to Martha Wigden and Christine over at the House Budget Office, House Budget and Research Office and their staff, as well as the Senate Budget and Evaluation Office, who puts in hours upon hours during this time of year to make sure that all these numbers in this, what's 178 pages to us, but it's really lifesaver to others, is right. And that even though we're dealing with a truncated process the last half of the year, that the numbers are correct and the agencies have what they need to make sure that Georgians have the services that are available to them. Also in this process, we have been able to work hand in hand with the Office of Planning and Budget. The governor's office has been very kind. We appreciate Director Farr, Kelly Noggle, as well as Trey Kilpatrick, who's been kind and involved us in this process from the beginning, which is why we were able to move so much faster this year than we have been able to move in years past. So really appreciate them including us from the beginning as we work things through. I mentioned the Senate budget staff. I also need to say happy birthday. I know there were two senators in the room, but Andrew Zoll over at the Senate Budget Office, who worked on the judiciary side of this budget, it's his birthday as well. And Andrew, we appreciate the time you put into making sure this happened. While I've thanked all the staff, I also want to thank the minority party, particularly the minority leader, who was so kind as to be involved in this process. In fact, it was her idea originally that helped us move to a more digital format for the joint appropriations hearing. So, Senator from the 55th, thank you for your help and your leadership to make this be a bipartisan bill. The amended budget for FY21 is laying before you now. You'll see that it includes increased revenue of roughly $654 million. Of that $654 million increase, $567 million goes into the QBE formula to restore 60% of the reduction we had to take during the pandemic. Remember, when we joined here in June, the numbers were a whole lot worse. We had to cut roughly $2.2 billion out of the budget. Those were painstaking days. That were days I know you agonized with us as we made those reductions. But now, because of Governor Kemp's really bold move at the time to leave Georgia open so that hardworking Georgians could continue to run their businesses, could go to work, employ other Georgians, and keep our revenues at a level that was slightly higher than we thought they would be, we're going to be able to add back roughly 60% to almost every QBE formula. And that's really a tribute to the governor, and I appreciate his leadership on that move. On top of just that add to QBE, we're also going to be able to add $70 million to the USG formula for growth, fully funding that formula, as well as $3 million to the technical college formula to fund growth there as well. On top of the $567 million I told you we were able to add back into QBE, we were also able to fully fund growth for K-12 for this year. The governor made some other moves as well that are somewhat educational based, and I want to make sure we highlight those. In the amended budget, the governor added $20 million for broadband, rural broadband, for partnerships and grants with local governments. The Senate included that in this amended budget as well. We've seen that broadband is important for business, but we've seen even more in the pandemic that it's important for education. So I appreciate the governor's add there and appreciate the work with the subcommittee to include that and keep that as we've moved through this budget process. Told you about all the ads we've had that are education or somewhat education related. Our next biggest ad area really comes in with public health. You'll see that the Senate has $27 million in ads to the epidemiology programs, really to help with things that we've heard from you that are going on. We've heard from you and your constituents that they're having issues with scheduling. We know that DPH has federal money that's going to help them with a scheduling system. We were able to come in and add some additional funds to help tie that scheduling system into a vaccine management and distribution program so that our providers don't have to call DPH 20, 30 times a day and find out when their shipment's coming, was their shipment placed correctly, how many people are going to be able to get a vaccine because this is the number of vaccines actually being shipped. So they won't have to do that anymore. We hope we can automate that process and really allow them to see in almost an Amazon-like way where that delivery is in shipment. We also added $15 million to the ADAP program, which helps with other infectious diseases and helps us keep Georgians healthy, for a total add of roughly about $41 million, between $41 and $42 million in public health. The other big dollar move you'll see in this budget is in the Department of Transportation. Because of some of the CARES funds that came in, actually the CRISA funds that came in recently from the federal government, we're going to be able to move $92 million out of capital maintenance and move that into capital construction. When we do that, it helps us move things faster if we're funding the construction side with state dollars. And I see some of you who've been on DOT boards and worked with DOTs in the past, you understand why that move really just helps Georgians move projects faster. Other big moves you'll see is $25 million to true up the FLIPA formula. FLIPA is used to supplant or supplement local tax bases where governments are having constituents that move into the conservation programs that reduce their taxes, their property taxes. The FLIPA formula helps put back a little bit of that local money, and that's, again, it helps harness the power of state funds to protect and conserve state resources and also not put the local governments at a disadvantage when it does so. We also you'll see in this amended budget, $35 million to true up the DISH formula. DISH is what we use as disproportionate share hospital funds to deemed and non-deemed hospitals to help with their care of indigent care, with their portion of indigent care, and there's $35 million in this amended budget to help true up those lines. You'll also see various lines in this budget that have a zero beside them. What we did is tried to copy the FY21 language where agencies used federal funds that came from federal CARES packages, so that when you go back home to your district and you're trying to figure out, well, the state didn't have a line here, but I know this got funded. How did it happen? Well, we tried to make it where it was really clear and easy for you to see how federal funds were spent from the CARES packages in this amended budget item. Another big ad that you're going to hear talked about, and I know has been on the minds of many of you in this room because you brought it up to us in committee, is our Department of Corrections and Department of Juvenile Justice programs. In our subcommittees, we heard testimony that we had 90% turnover at times in those agencies. When you have 90% turnover, and I think the chairman from the 56 will actually tell you in DJJ it's 98% in a year, then you're not ever making headway. All you're doing is just training. You're training someone who's moving on. Because of the attritions that we have and the openings and vacancies there, it actually would be a smarter financial move to add a 10% increase to Department of Corrections and Department of Juvenile Justice corrections officers to get their pay up, to reduce that turnover. It'll be a savings in the long run, and we believe that the House and the governor's office is supportive of this measure as well, and we appreciate their leadership there. You also see in the lines of health care, this one in DCH, not DPH, that there's a $19 million add to nursing homes. It adds 5% to help with skilled nursing, the payments to skilled nursing facilities for the daily rates, so that during this pandemic, they have the resources they need to make sure that those who are in nursing homes have the care they need during the coronavirus epidemic that we're facing. One other line item I also want to point you to would be the governor's emergency fund line item, where we took and added $7.5 million. We did that on purpose. There was a reason. That's to help draw down in times of disasters, which create extraordinary demands on government. We want to make sure the governor has that flexibility where we can give it to him, so that if he needs to use that for buying vaccines, if he needs to use that because as we start to enter into hurricane season in just a few months, and also the fires that we've faced in the past, that those funds are there for flexibility should they be needed in this amended budget. Two agencies that have faced, well, first let me say that I think that I speak for all of you when I say we really appreciate our state workers and the efforts they have placed at this time to keep Georgians working, to keep Georgia licenses going out, to keep Georgia business licenses going out, to keep services going out to Georgians in a time that wasn't easy to do so. So, Mr. President, if it's appropriate at this point in time, I'd like to ask for a round of applause for the hardworking Georgians at our state government who have kept things going during this coronavirus epidemic. There's another group that I'm going to ask you to give a round of applause to as well, though. Because as it turns out, we get to come up here and we get to make rules that help govern our state, that we hope benefit our state. We also get to pass a budget that we hope helps benefit our state as well. But if there weren't 11 million, 10.5 million Georgians going to work every day to pay taxes to make this possible, there's absolutely no way that you and I would be able to have these jobs and that our state employees will be able to have their jobs. So I want to say a thank you to Governor Kemp and then ask for another round of applause for the hardworking Georgians who have continued to go to work during this pandemic and kept Georgia revenues strong. And Governor Kemp, thank you for allowing them to do so. There are two agencies during this time that have probably, while we do appreciate, and I appreciate the round of applause for all state workers, that have faced hardships that are truly unique to the pandemic. And I would say that those would be the Department of Public Health and the Department of Labor. And in this budget, you will see that we have assisted Dr. Toomey, as she has asked, with several positions. The House added a chief medical officer position, a deputy commissioner position, and a chief data officer position, where Dr. Toomey was very upfront and told us, hey, I need some help in these areas to fortify my staff to make sure that I can keep moving forward with the public health demands of Georgia and to do better in areas where we weren't always the best, because that's what we strive to be. The Senate heard her request, fully funded those from the House, and also was able to find funds to add 2 additional positions, including a programmer's position and a position for financial oversight. We think those are particularly important. One, the programmer's position, because you've heard about how some of our systems don't talk to each other in public health, where you've got a scheduling system that's not talking to a vaccine management system. All those have to talk together. As I see the senator from the 48 nodding her head, she understands this as well. That if those are talking together, then we can dramatically reduce the workload on our public health employees and allow them to do what they want to do, which is get shots in arms, get people healthy. So we want to add some money. We're going to add that position. The financial oversight position is extremely important as well, because you know that the Department of Public Health has received over $1 billion in federal funds since we convened in June. So what we want to do there is make sure that those funds are spent appropriately, that we know where they are, that if we're called to be audited one day by the federal government, that we can point it out, and we need to fund that position to help her in those areas. You'll also see an ad for a special project in line 215 for a chief labor officer. Remember, the federal government has given us a lot of money to help out with unemployment as well. In fact, they've given us some funds to help manage and implement those programs. The state needs to do its part. So you'll see in line 215 that we funded a special project. It's a chief labor officer, subject to future legislation that'll lay out that job more, that I think some members in here are working on, to help oversee unemployment and financial audit questions that may arise out of the Department of Labor. The last group I need to thank is you. In this process, we started just about a month ago, came into session, and this is the fastest I know of that we've ever moved the amended budget. And that happened because you cleared your schedules and made this a priority. I appreciate the senator from the 1st, his 6:30 a.m. meeting. I don't think many of us appreciated it at the time, but thank you, Senator, for setting the, laying down the gauntlet really to make sure that we could get this budget done in a timely manner so that state agencies would understand what resources they have to deal with for that, again, that truncated year. I hope we've worked extremely hard to include the requests that you've presented. I think this is a budget you can be proud of. It's certainly a lot better position than we were facing when we stood here last June. So thank you for your input. Thank you for the time that you've devoted to this matter. And remember that as you're holding these 178 pages, there's something that touches your district back home, your constituents, your neighbors, your loved ones. And thank you for allowing me to be a part of this process and help lead through it. Mr. President, thank you for allowing me this time, and I'll yield to questions.
Does any senator have a question? The chair sees none.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for your favorable consideration to the Senate Appropriations substitute to House Bill 80.
Chair recognizes the minority leader to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate, and good morning, colleagues. I rise today to remind you that our fellow Georgians are hurting. You know this, of course. You have friends and family who have been sick over the last year. You have constituents who have lost their businesses. You know people who have lost their jobs. There are people in your districts who don't have insurance. Some have lost their homes. You certainly know people who have educated their children at home because we haven't been able to provide the assurance of health safety at schools. Many Georgia families exist on a wing and a prayer, trying to hold it all together right now. Today we are voting on the supplemental budget. Many Georgians who frankly don't have the time to watch everything we do here because they are busy watching everything in their own lives. They won't know the difference between the gap budget and the larger one we will vote on next month. But they have entrusted us as their elected leaders to do the right thing. And when it comes down to the right thing, it's not a party line vote. It's a vote for what is in their best interests. We fell short last year when we originally voted on this year's budget. We left holes in education, health care, social work. The list goes on and on. Now we are plugging some of those holes in that budget. But have we done enough? Of course, we are mindful of the financial disaster left in the wake of COVID-19. We must protect our state's bond rating for future borrowing. We must retain enough to keep our government operational. But it is also our responsibility to meet our citizens where they are. And for many, it is the worst place they've ever been in. I believe, we should have done more. We could have done more. We certainly could have added money to this budget to help our county health departments better deliver vaccines. We could have added money to ensure our educators were vaccinated so children could safely return to schools and parents could return to work. We could scale back on tax breaks. We can increase a tax on tobacco. There are things we could consider to help our citizens. We could have considered a lot of other stuff, but we didn't. The politics of the day should not drive our best thinking and our best policy and budget making decisions. Always, it's the people of Georgia that should drive our decision making. Mr. President, I yield the well while asking us to do better. Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 80? The chair sees none. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? Chair hears none, and the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? All senators have voted. Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 52, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. For what purpose does the senator from the 19th rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate immediately transmit House Bill 80 to the House.
Senator from the 19th has moved that the Senate immediately transmit House Bill 80 to the House. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and it is immediately transmitted. The chair would like to take a second to thank both the Appropriations Chairman and Melody and Brent for their great work and your entire staff. It's no easy feat. Thank you. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of Senate Bill 4?
Senate Bill 4 by Senator Kirkpatrick of the 32nd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 5 of Title 26 of the OCGA relating to drug abuse treatment and education programs so as to prohibit patient brokering, to provide for definitions, to provide for exceptions, to provide for penalties, to provide for enforcement. The Senate Committee on Health and Human Services recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Watson of the 1st.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 32nd to speak to Senate Bill 4.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is another bill that may look familiar to many of you. It passed the Senate unanimously last year. And this bill relates to the recovery housing industry, which involves recovery residences for people coming out of treatment for substance abuse. Many people coming out of treatment cannot return home for various reasons, and recovery residences play an important role. Drug treatment facilities are regulated by DCH. Recovery residences are not currently regulated because they do not provide treatment. Florida passed a bill a few years ago putting some guardrails in place, and after that, some of the players moved to Georgia. This bill is an attempt to protect citizens who are in recovery, and it has two parts. Section 1 deals with patient brokering in the substance abuse recovery area, and it closely mirrors federal anti-kickback language. It prohibits inducement for referrals in this industry. Section 2 relates to high-tech drug testing, which is an important part of the recovery process, but there are abuses that affect this vulnerable population. This bill prohibits unbundling in order to bill for these tests individually, which is much more expensive, and performing medically unnecessary tests. These facilities play an important role in recovery, and it's time to be sure they're doing the right thing for our vulnerable recovery community. I've not heard any opposition to the bill. Mr. President, I'll yield for questions.
Does anyone have a question for the senator? The chair recognizes the senator from the 36th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. To the senator in the well, do you yield? Isn't it true we had unanimous consent in the Health and Human Services Committee for this effort with no opposition coming forward, as you just stated? And further, that we heard some really horrific accounts from first-hand and second-hand accounts of people that have been victimized by this practice of supercharging, luring people into residences, and even some cases where they were actually urged to begin using again in order to keep the money flowing to that operator. Could you maybe expound on that so that those that haven't heard that testimony could get some sense of the urgency of this bill? Thank you.
Yes, Senator, thank you. We indeed heard from a number of representatives of groups. One person came up from the state of Florida, where they started having this problem years ago, where there are call centers that people find on the internet,
And these are people in desperate situations, and the call center refers them to a specific facility and gets a payment for that, which I would call a kickback. And those people frequently don't have a lot of options, and they get into these facilities when the money runs out. They are kind of hung out to dry. And sometimes there's even a situation where they are set up to relapse deliberately so that the whole cycle starts all over again. So it's really something that, since during the pandemic, we've seen an increasing need in the community that is in the substance abuse area and also mental health in general. And so we really need to get a handle on this. This bill obviously wasn't opposed by anyone last year. We just ran out of time in the House due to the COVID restrictions that we had. Thank you for the question.
You have no more questions, Senator.
Thank you. I yield the will.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against Senate Bill 4? The chair sees none. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none and the main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. All senators have voted. Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 52, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption to Senate Resolution 82?
Senate Resolution 82 by Senator Dugan of the 30th and others, a resolution relative to meetings and adjournments of the General Assembly and for other purposes. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the Majority Leader to speak to Senate Resolution 82.
Thank you, Mr. President. Got the adjournment resolution that's put in front of you. I won't go through all the dates, but for those that don't have a copy in their hands, that are going to ask me as soon as we walk out of the room, what you have in front of you is the 3 days, today, Wednesday, and Thursday of this week. You have the Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next week in session. The following week, we're in here for 5 days, then the weekend, and then on day 25, the legislative day 25, is Monday, March 1st. The rationale for that is that gives us, on March 1st, we're back in so we can run the calendar to the to day 40. It gives us, we're not burning days on the weekend there. Subject to your questions on the calendar.
Does any senator have a question for the Majority Leader? Chair sees none.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well. I ask for y'all's vote on the calendar.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the resolution? Chair sees none. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none and the main question is ordered. Questions on the adoption of the resolution. All those in favor of the resolution will vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? All senators have voted. Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the adoption of the resolution, the yeas are 52, the nays are 0. The resolution, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Chair recognizes the majority leader for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate immediately transmit Senate Resolution 82 to the House.
The majority leader has moved that the Senate immediately transmit Senate Resolution 82 to the House. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and it will immediately be transmitted. Chair recognizes the majority leader again.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate stand adjourned until 10 o'clock on Wednesday, not July 4th.
February 10th. I'll help you, February 10th.
We're thinking ahead on this one. You
It's
just write
almost
this
April
down to see if
Fool's
I'm
Day.
paying attention here, right? Until February 10th, 2021.
We were all in the process of changing our plans really quickly. Mr. Secretary, do you have any announcements?
The Rules Committee will meet upon adjournment in room 450. Higher Education Committee will meet at 1 p.m. in room 450. Insurance and Labor Committee will meet at 1 p.m. in mezzanine 1. Health and Human Services Committee will meet at 2:15 in room 450. The Public Safety Committee meeting is canceled. Regulated Industries and Utilities will meet at 3:30 in room 450. And the Transportation Committee meeting is canceled. This completes the order.
Chair recognizes the pro tem for the purpose of introducing the doctor of the day. Better late than never.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to introduce you guys to a friend of mine for many years, Dr. Frank McDonald. He's our doctor of the day today. Dr. McDonald practiced medicine, neurology in Gainesville for many years. He's practiced medicine over 20 years. He went to the University of Mississippi. He did his fellowship and his residency at Jackson, Mississippi. He has also been president of Medical Association of Georgia and the Society of Neurologists. And Dr. McDonald and his wife, Shanta, reside in Gainesville with their 3 adult daughters. And I'd invite you to go down and say hello, particularly if you're not feeling bad. Mr. President, while I'm here, I will also take this opportunity to remind everyone to get your COVID test. Any questions about that? Get your COVID test downstairs, 7 a.m. to 11 a.m., Mondays and Thursdays. And if you don't get that test on Mondays and Thursdays from 7 to 11, you can very easily walk across to Sloppy Floyd, room 404, and get on the balcony there and get a test. The test over there is a nasal swab. The senator from Middle Georgia, Perry, Georgia, can tell you you would rather have the spit test than the nasal swab test. Thank you, Mr. President.
Didn't know you practiced medicine. Chair recognizes the senator from the 40th for a announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies of the Senate, the Women's Legislative Caucus will meet basically now. Go to room 216, pick up your box lunch. Notice the time change. We will start the Zoom meeting at 11:45. The topic is mental illness during the pandemic. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any other senators have an announcement? The chair sees none. The majority leader has moved that the Senate stand adjourned until late summer. Just kidding. Wednesday, February 10th, 2021 at 10 a.m. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes clearly have it, and the Senate will stand adjourned.